Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased, true crime channel. First on the docket today, more about the Barry Morphew preliminary hearing. We have a special guest. Second, when you fly, don't forget your mask and bring your roll of duct tape. Failure to follow common sense can get you indicted. Too cute for prison? Not sure about that. And then finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. Now, first on the docket. Yesterday was day 2 of the 4-day preliminary hearing scheduled for Barry Morphew. The other 2 days of the preliminary hearing aren't set for another couple of weeks. And as we stated yesterday, we had, that's right, producer Julie sitting in the courthouse both days. Now, a lot of people were in the comments saying, Scott, you need to look at this closer because, he drove his truck and made 5 trash runs, and that's sign of guilt. Okay. Preliminary hearing, the rules of evidence are relaxed. At trial, speculation about why the trash bags or items were dumped is speculation as to what was in them. And I said yesterday, I'm reserving judgment. We'll wait and see. But so far, there was no knockout punch by either side about this case. I'm looking for some sort of physical evidence that puts something to Barry Morphew in the house, in a car, and to date, we haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's forthcoming. We'll have to wait and see. But we thought it would be interesting for us to hear directly from Julie instead of me telling you what was there. So first of all, welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Are you excited to be on this side of the
It's
the
weird,
camera?
but it's fun. And thank you so much for sending me. I had a really good time.
Okay.
I've never sat in on a trial, so that was a lot of fun doing that.
All right. Well, first of all, where was the preliminary hearing?
So it was in Salida. It was about a 3-hour drive from Denver, and it's a beautiful town. There's the mountains in the background. It's kind of what I would imagine Boulder would have been like 30 years ago.
Okay.
Just a fun town. I went and had dinner right on the river.
Okay.
Spent a little time in town kind of checking out what was going on.
What time did you get to the courthouse on Monday morning to make sure that you were actually in the courthouse so you didn't have to call back and say, Scott, I didn't get in?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got in. So I got there at 6, and I was the second person there. And there was another lady there from Estes Park, and she said she'd been there since 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many people were ultimately allowed in the courtroom when you were there?
The first day, I think they only allowed 8 in from the public and about 10 from the media.
Okay. And there was an overflow room somewhere where it was being piped into?
It was a few blocks down, they said, at the fairgrounds, I guess. And they said that they might not even do that next time because when people got turned away at the courthouse, they didn't make their way down there for some reason. They just gave up. They only wanted the courthouse or nothing.
They just went home.
Yes, they went home.
Okay. So set the scene for us. What was it like? I mean, obviously the prosecution was there. Did they have a lot of exhibits? Was it all on, the computer? Same thing with the defense. Were they organized, disorganized? What was that like?
So I was in the probably 5th row back, and we had to do social distancing. So there was only probably 3 people per bench, and there was I think there was 4 people from the state, and then the 2 attorneys for Barry. Barry was sitting in the middle, and then they had some kind of assistant or some lady. And then on the other side was all the press, and then in the back was all the family, which included the 2 daughters, Barry's mother, and then a private investigator type person.
Was there any interaction between the prosecutors and Barry Morphew's daughters?
The prosecutors and Barry Morphew's daughters? Not that I saw, no.
Okay. And I think that's interesting because the defense wanted I think that's interesting because the defense attorneys didn't want the transcript or the affidavit released as it relates to why their dad is there, but yet they were clearly interacting with the defense attorneys and the defense investigator the entire time?
Yeah, the defense attorneys a few times gave the two daughters a hug, and there was a private investigator, I guess, there, and she was talking to the two daughters too. And Barry turned around and mouthed like, "I love you" a few times to the daughters, so there was a lot of interaction going there, but the prosecutors kind of kept their distance.
Okay. And so clearly, from what you could tell, the daughters were on Team Barry for these proceedings?
It seemed like it, yeah.
Okay. How about Barry Morphew? Describe him. Was he in jail garb or did they dress him out?
So he was in like a dark gray suit. He was a lot smaller than I pictured. I don't know why I pictured him being like this big jock. I guess because he's been in jail for a while. He's lost a lot of his muscle mass. And his hair was not blonde anymore. It was like white and kind of like wispy and kind of like cowlick in the back from what I could see. And then he had on cowboy boots that his pants were like kind of haphazardly tucked in to his cowboy boots.
His pants were tucked into his
kind
cowboy
of
boots?
Yeah, like it kind of looked intentional, like he kind of like thought it looked neater. I'm not sure. Yeah
Okay weird. Well, that's an interesting style for court, but you never know. There may be some sort of security reason or something. Who knows why they made him do that. Let's talk about the presentation of evidence. I mean, I read your notes that were pretty copious. I saw your tweets. I saw your tweets, and I saw some other people's tweets. Was there any big aha moment that you saw in there where people gasped or there was something going on there? I just didn't see a knockout punch.
Yeah, not really. The two moments that stuck out to me was at first when they revealed the affair that Suzanne was having. It wasn't really like a, oh my gosh. It was just kind of, I think people kind of expected it. A lot of the locals might have known about it because they were just kind of like, well, knew that was going to come out. And I was like shocked. And then the other thing that kind of stuck out was, I guess Barry was carrying a bunch of things into or out of the hotel room, and one of them was a blue shirt or a blue garment, and it's the same blue that she always wears. It's kind of like a teal blue. And I thought that was a big deal, but then they kind of breezed right past it and didn't really dig too much into it, so maybe it wasn't anything.
Yeah, and you mentioned that to me before we got started, is that you thought that they were asking questions and really building up to something. And then they just kind of stopped, both sides, right? Yeah,
it felt like that. I was like, oh, now it's going to get juicy. And then they'd be like, no further questions. And I'm like, are they holding out on something? Or I don't know enough because I'm obviously not an attorney. But I was like, I thought we were going to drop a big bomb. And then they just move on to the next thing, kind of. And I didn't think of like a lot of the text messages. I was like, oh, now it's going to get juicy. And then, okay, on to the next thing.
How were the prosecutors? Were they prepared? Were they, asking good questions, or were they disorganized?
I thought the prosecutors seemed really organized and they knew what they were doing. For the most part, it was Lindsay. What's his first name? Jeff, I think. Jeff Lindsay.
Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Lindsay. He was mostly talking, and I thought he was pretty well prepared. And then for some reason, and again, I'm not a defense attorney, so I don't know, but I felt like the defense attorneys were kind of stumbling around with the exhibits. They'd say, oh, do you have Exhibit X? Do you have Exhibit Y? Oh, it's over here. Did I enter that already? Oh, okay, I did. And they did that like a few times throughout both days, which I thought was kind of interesting. Is that common? Is that?
Well, you usually try to have a pretty good idea of where the stuff is, but there's a lot of documents in this, so I could see the defense getting a bit of a pass on something like that. But no, I mean, clearly you like to look organized in your presentation, not only to the court and if there was a jury, but it also instills trust and confidence in your client if you're not fumbling around the courtroom, because it's obvious if you're not prepared.
There was a few times too where they'd drop kind of a bomb or not really, and I would look over and see if Barry like sat up straight or crossed his legs, and he didn't move like at all. There was a few times where he was like leaning like this, and then his attorney and him would be like, I think touching like shoulders because they were sitting so close, but he like barely moved, didn't really say anything except to his daughters. That was it.
Okay, and everyone had to wear masks in there, so
Yeah.
were you able to see any facial expressions at all?
No, he couldn't see any facial expressions. He would pull his mask down to talk to his daughters before the breaks and ask them, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling today?
Okay.
Like questions like that. But that was it.
Now, were you able to talk to some of the locals? Did you get any juicy scoop on some of the locals? Where did Barry frequently like to go in town?
Yeah, so I talked to, there was about 8 of us in the public, so we became kind of friends, and I just heard, I don't know if this is true or not, he would go to the gym, obviously, but then he'd also go to a salon and go tanning.
Like to get tan, okay. And you said his physical demeanor, you were surprised because all the photos he looked kind of big and buff, but obviously hadn't been able to hit the weights while he was in custody.
I don't know what I was expecting. I guess from the pictures you see he's like about to bust out of the shirts that he's wearing, and then I saw him in person and I was like, this is it? This is the guy that we're talking about? And it just didn't feel like that was him for some reason. It was just weird for me.
Okay. The people that showed up from the members of the public, could you tell, were they there to just kind of, look at it from both sides, listen, or were they committed to, supporting the prosecution, or was anybody there for the defense?
No, nobody was there for the defense. Most of the public was there. Team Suzanne, Justice for Suzanne, from what I know. And then there was a bunch of news reporters that were just reporting. And some of the news reporters, you could tell that they were also Team Suzanne. I don't think anybody was Team Barry except maybe the daughters and the mom.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, and out of full disclosure, I think you had indicated at one point, oh my gosh, he so did it. Mm-hmm. But I've tried to keep you, no, you got to wait and see what comes down. After only 2 days, and understand there's only been 2 days, they got 2 more days for the prosecution and the defense to cross-examine or present any evidence they choose to do so. Based upon what you've heard so far, just based, not what you believe, but what you know, do you think the prosecution's made a case that would convince a jury ultimately of proof beyond a reasonable doubt?
I don't think so at all. There was really nothing. I was kind of trying to sit in it as a jury, if I was in the jury, and I was thinking like, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt. And there was not one thing where I was like, got him. And there was like one little part where they would say his cell phone was pinging throughout the house, and that was when he was most likely chasing her and she was unconscious. And then the defense fired right back and said that it wouldn't make any sense because each ping there was like a 1 second, so he'd have to be traveling 30 miles an hour. So I was like, I don't know how this makes sense then. That can't be possible. So that was the only thing that I was like, gotcha, and then, oh, maybe not.
And that's why you have to wait and see for cross-examination, because remember, the prosecutors are advocates for their side, and it's not their job to present all the evidence. That's why the defense has to bring it out. And, it's amazing the amount of information that they had between telephones, card data from the little black box in the F-350 truck, I think, that he has.
Surveillance video, text messages.
iClouds, Bobcat GPSs, and the prosecutors agreed, or the witnesses for the prosecution agreed, that the Bobcat had nothing to do with this case.
Yeah, I know.
And so was there any talk, did you overhear any scuttlebutt, anything in the courtroom, all the juicy stuff, like the prosecutor saying, just wait, it's coming, anything like that?
Not really, no. And I'm a very nosy person by nature, so I was
Which is why we hired her.
I was like sneaking up next to the state, kind of like trying to listen in, and they're not going to talk loud enough for me to hear. But if I could catch anything, and I couldn't hear them saying anything, just wait, or no reassurance to anybody around. They just kind of walked in, walked out. They didn't talk to anybody, didn't talk to the press. It was just strictly business that day.
What was the interaction like between the prosecutors and the defense attorneys? Were they amicable, or has it already turned professional but hostile?
I think, professional but hostile. Like, they would ask a question, and then there'd be an objection, and then they'd whip their head around, and, well, it's relevant because, and then, like, so it was still professional, but I was kind of like, ooh, like, and I watch attorneys and I have so much respect because I would just go up there and start crying if somebody yelled at me like that.
Yeah, you can't take it personal.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just doing your job.
But
yeah, so it sounds like the prosecutors were getting a little tired with the objections, and then
and there was
it's
a
relevant
lot of
because of this
repetition. The text messages. Did Barry know about the affair? Was asked like a dozen times, and the prosecution was like, enough. We asked this 20 times. Like we get it. So
what was your take? And like I said, not being an attorney, not having attended a lot of court appearances, what was your take on the judge? Was he in charge of the courtroom, or were the defense attorneys or the prosecutors really in charge?
I don't know. I guess kind of both. He did a good job. He kept track of how much time, like down to the minute, each side has used, which I thought was a good idea, because now he's saying for the next 2 days, the defense has an hour and a half less because they used an hour and a half more this first time. But there was a few times where I felt, and I don't know, but I felt like he was kind of, let the defense say their piece, let them finish. And he was kind of leaning towards the defense, let them say their side. And I was like, I don't think we got the same, but I don't know.
Well, the judge has to, he has to balance,
Sure,
obviously the rules of evidence, which are relaxed at a preliminary hearing where you can bring in a lot of hearsay evidence that would not otherwise be admissible at trial. Which brings me to a lot of these text messages. You got some hearsay objections at a trial for sure. So we'll see. Obviously, the standard is very low at a preliminary hearing. It's simply probable cause. All the evidence needs to be viewed in the light most favorable to the prosecution. So we'll wait and see. So make your hotel reservation for the next 2 days of the preliminary hearing, and don't forget to submit your expense report. All right?
Sounds good.
All right.
I'll be back, August 25th?
25th, and we'll take a quick recess before we continue with the rest of the docket. Please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. Next on the docket, when you fly, bring your mask and also your roll of duct tape. Apparently, you're going to need it. This is now the third case where an individual on a flight has needed to be duct taped to control them until they land. The story that we're bringing you today, flight attendants on a flight from Maui, Hawaii, to Los Angeles reportedly used duct tape to restrain a 13-year-old boy. The teen allegedly tried to kick out a window next to his seat and became physical with his own mother. Other passengers saw the boy acting in an unruly manner during the American Airlines flight, which resulted in other passengers holding the boy as the flight attendant, taped him to his seat. Take a look at this video. I'm telling you, this is the third incident where we have had to duct tape people on the plane. Now, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe this 13-year-old has some issues. Hopefully, he gets some help that he deserves. Maybe he'll be charged. Not really sure how that's going to work for a juvenile, but obviously it can be done. But I don't understand why people cannot behave on an airplane. I've handled several of these cases, have several of them pending right now. You just have to follow the rules. And when you get in trouble up there, guess what? It's a federal offense. And you can go to prison when you interfere with a flight crew. I'm telling you, behave yourself. Don't drink. I don't think the 13-year-old was drinking, but behave yourself. You don't want to go to prison. Next on the docket, failure to exercise some common sense can get you indicted, okay? A Georgia grand jury has indicted 2 youth basketball coaches with murder and cruelty to children in the heat stroke death of a 16-year-old student athlete while they were exercising outdoors in some severe heat in 2019. The basketball coach had them doing outdoor drills, and the heat index was 106 degrees. Needless to say, a little common sense. I don't care how fast you are sucking down water, 106 degrees, the body is not going to last that long. And once again, it's youth basketball, okay? Use some common sense. In this particular case, La Rosa Marie Walker Esquire and Dwight Broom Palmer are charged to basically being held responsible for conducting this outdoor conditioning in violation of the school's own policies. If you're violating policies, that can create a duty. When you violate that duty, you can be held responsible. These outdoor drills in 106 degree heat index resulted in the death of Imani Bell. Bell told the coaches that she was in distress, and they told her to run up the stairs rather than to continue with the drills. Ultimately, she collapsed and passed away. Now, Bell's family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and now there's obviously criminal charges, which makes this much more severe. The family of Ms. Bell is hoping that people will exercise a little more common sense as a result of the civil lawsuit, as well as these criminal charges, and basically saying you cannot force children to practice under extreme conditions. Now, let's get something straight. Athletes need to practice. Athletes need to push themselves to extremes. Athletes don't need to be killed pushing themselves. It's youth sports, okay? When we were responsible for training young Marines down in Parris Island, South Carolina, and it got too hot, you had to curtail the outdoor physical activities. Why? Because people could get heat stroke and die, and that's a bad thing. And when they sent young men and women to be trained to become Marines, it was our responsibility to get them home safely and to make them better individuals. Well, that's what these coaches were responsible for, protecting this child and making sure that she was going to be a better person, not sending her to her death. Both of the defendants are released on a $75,000 bond. We'll continue to follow this case because it's so preventable. And these individuals may actually go to prison because something like this was so preventable, and it is complete violation of just common sense. Too cute for prison. Well, that's not exactly a reason why somebody shouldn't go to prison. A Florida man by the name of Cameron Herron, he's 18 at the time, and he was sentenced to prison for vehicular homicide. Now, apparently he has got some sort of huge following on social media, and people are saying that he is just too cute a person to go to prison and that he is basically being treated too harshly. Well, it turns out Jessica Ressinger Rabineau was in Tampa on July of 2018. She was pushing her daughter, Lilia, across Bayshore Boulevard shortly before noon when Cameron Herron, 18 at the time, plowed into them while he was street racing. The victims were struck by his black Ford Mustang. The vehicle was traveling at a high rate of speed alongside a gold Nissan. Both the mother and daughter subsequently passed away as a result of their injuries. The police, after their investigation, determined that Herron was driving the car and struck the mother and the child. In April, he was convicted and given a 24-year prison sentence for vehicular homicide. Now, that may seem harsh to a lot of people, but really, when you are driving a vehicle so fast down a street, recklessly with or extreme indifference to human life because somebody could step out and you could strike them and they could die, that's a pretty easy sentence because I've seen this charged as extreme indifference, and it could be charged literally as a first-degree murder case if the statute exists. And the general rule of thumb is when there's a dead body, somebody has to go to prison. And 24 years for the death of two human beings is not that much time when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. And so for Mr. Herron, who has developed this huge following, particularly out of Russia and the Middle East, even Mr. Herron's own mother stated that these people have an unhealthy infatuation with her son. Young Mr. Herron may be too cute for prison, And that's probably what he thought when he was being sentenced. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of people in there that think he's rather cute. But that is not a reason to send somebody to prison. Their looks. Some days I just don't understand what people are thinking. All right, next on the docket, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Please meet Brandon DeMarcus Prescia, 28 years old and a tattoo artist. Now, most tattoo artists either have their own shop so that they can have all their tools and make sure everything is clean and safe. I've even seen people do it on a portable manner, similar to what Mr. Prescia did. I've also seen situations where stuff has been collected in prison that could be used for tattooing. It's amazing how they actually do that. But Mr. Prescia, he thought he should just use the local McDonald's where he could do a little tattooing, that's right, on some teenagers. That's right, teenagers. Apparently the McDonald's became concerned when actually somebody was posting the fact that Mr. Prescia was doing this on social media. Mr. Prescia is being held on a $25,000 bond, being charged with tattooing a minor and tattooing without a license. Now you may think that Mr. Prescia, how could he be a dumb criminal contestant? He's just trying to help these kids out, right? Who doesn't want a little ink these days? Well, Mr. Prescia was on probation. He was going to be sentenced to prison, but the judge gave him a chance and did not send him to prison and suspended the prison sentence on the condition that he not commit any new violations. Well, guess what, Mr. Prescia? If you're convicted of these charges, this will be a violation of the condition of no new law violations, and you are going to go to prison for 3 years based upon your felony assault and battery charges that you got a break on. You would think when you're on probation, you would do nothing that could be interpreted as breaking the law. That's why, Mr. Prescia, you are a dumb criminal contestant of the day. Now, Mr. Prescia, if you are a dumb criminal contestant winner of the week, along with the other contestants, that's right, you could win some cool CrimeTalk merchandise. Hit the link below. Not only do they have cool mugs, you can get cool shirts and some other stuff. And you don't have to become a dumb criminal contestant to do so. So hit the link below to get it. But Mr. Prescia, if you win, you may have to wait till you get out of prison because they won't let us send these in to prison. Been there, done that, tried it, doesn't work. All right. That's all we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the docket, and we'll see you tomorrow on Crime Talk.